PT Pop here, all four loaves of my brain secured behind my back. Today I'm going to talk about phony phone calls coming into your headset in a call center. Stay tuned. I want to thank very much one of my watchers, one of my listeners, one of my viewers here on PT Pop, Elsa Blair Salerno. Elsa made a comment on one of my videos, and she asked me, in your experience of working in a call center, do you believe some call center companies use fake callers and accounts to test employees? And I appreciate that, Elsa. Thanks for the question. And in my honest professional opinion, absolutely. I completely believe that they use call center, what I call ringers, or shills, or people that are fake and phony to call in. They either have actors, secret shoppers, or they have supervisors or Q&A reps call in. Before I get to my main topic, though, I want to thank everybody who has subscribed to my channel. Thanks to all of you who have bought my book, Press 1 for Murder. This is the book right here. I wrote this book. It's a book of fiction about a guy named Jeremy that works in a call center. He works in a bank call center, and several of his customers turn up dead. They've taken the room temperature challenge, and the police think he's killing his customers, and he loses his marbles a little bit. So this is a book that's now for sale on Amazon for $6.99. It is a novella, not a novel. It's not long enough to be a novel. It's about 30,000 words. It's an easy read. It's a fun read. If you've worked in a call center, you'll like it. Press 1 for Murder, now on Amazon by Peter Tompkins. I'd like to introduce you to my training assistant, Boingo Boingo. He's here with us tonight, and he's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He looks like he's been drinking, though, doesn't he? Andy, can I sit in the jail tonight? Should rename him Otis. And I'd like to request each of you who have not subscribed to my channel to take a little poke down there and subscribe where it says, I think it's down there, right down there. Poke it with your pointer, with your cursor, and subscribe to my channel. So there you have it. But Elsa Blair Salerno, thanks for the question. And let me try to go over this the best way I know how. Call center around the country, they monitor your work. They monitor your phone calls, and they record them, or allegedly they record all the phone calls, so management can go back and pull the call and listen to you on the phones and see if you gave out the correct information, to see if you're friendly, to see if you swore at the customer, to see what your interaction was like. And they use these pulled calls to grade you on your performance. It's one of like 3 metrics they use to grade your performance, including your attendance and your adherence to schedule. And the metrics that they pull on you, including the review of your calls, your call reviews, weigh heavily on whether you get raises, if you get bonuses, if you can post out of your position and apply for another job within the company. So all of your quality metrics affect everything within the call center. They affect your future. They affect whether you stay with the company and a variety of things. They're very important, and they're very critical measurements that affect everything to do with your job. So what happens is you'll get pulled aside by a supervisor. Now, once a month, they're supposed to get together with you. They're supposed to pull 3 calls that you have had with customers over the previous month, and they're supposed to sit down with you with like a piece of paper. They always pull out a piece of paper that has all the grading things on it, like were you friendly, were you warm, did you give the wow factor, which is something that another one of my viewers, Olivia McPherson, told me in one of my comments. She said she was told and given a bad grade because she didn't give the wow factor. And so the wow factor is a whole nother thing, but the wow factor is basically if you're friendly, if you're upbeat, if you're charismatic, if you're warm, if you're empathetic, if you're touchy-feely, so to speak, with a customer over the phone. But when I worked in the call center, and when Elsa asked me if I feel there were fake phone calls coming into to the call centers to grade us, I feel yes, there were. And here's my reason why. Okay. I'm going to use Verizon Wireless, where I worked for 2 years, for an example. At Verizon Wireless, I worked there full time. Okay. And as a full time call center rep, I took 80 inbound calls a day. And I was one of 1,500 employees, most of which who were taking inbound calls. So let's say everybody takes 80 calls a day, 1,600 calls a month. And you say 1,600 calls a month times 1,500 employees, 2.4 million calls a month in one call center. And the company had what's called the Q&A team. It's a quality assurance team. They sat in little bullpen areas, about 40 employees of men and women that would sit and listen to calls and listen to the quality of the calls. And they would allegedly listen to these calls, pull the call. If they found a bad call or they found good calls, they would allegedly forward it to the individual team supervisors. And my supervisor was a zippity bebop guy who, he's zipping and he's a hipping and he's a, he was the Bill Cosby lookalike racist dude. So they would forward the calls on our team that he oversaw to him, and then he would sit down and say, okay, he'd pull you aside and say, hey, Pete, it's time to go over your calls. Let's go over these calls today, zipping and a bipping. And then he would sit down with you with a grading sheet, and say, hey, we're going to go over your calls today. You got a couple of bad ones. And so at Verizon, it was really rough for me because every time this guy sat down with me, he'd always find one or two calls per month that I failed, where I either didn't give the wow factor, or I gave out wrong information, or I put them on hold for too long, or my talk time was too high. And see, on these quality assurance calls, if you don't get like a grade of a B or better, you fail the call. And these grades, as I had stated before, all of these grades affect your future with the company. They affect whether you stay with the company. They affect whether you get bonuses, if you get pay raises, if you get promoted, if you can post out or apply for a job in another department to get out of the call center. And if you fail them, keep failing them, you're stuck in the call center. You have nowhere to go. You can't get raises. You can't get bonuses. You can't get, anything, any of the perks that you'd like to have. You can't get, at Verizon, I want to get college tuition assistance, and I couldn't get it because I kept failing these calls. So here's my theory as to why I believe many of these calls were fake. Now, number one, I always would listen. So the supervisor will pull you aside, have their grading sheet with you, and then you both put on the headsets and you both listen to the call at the same time. And he'd sit there and go, well, you're not quite giving the zipping and the bipping factor there. You're kind of off there. I'm going to have to fill you on this call. Every call that I failed were these really bizarre calls. Like the customer would call and say, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to microwave a cat with my Android phone. Can you tell me how to microwave a cat with my Android? I understand your concern. I'll be glad to help you out with that. So I understand you're concerned about how to microwave your cat with your Android. Yeah, I heard you could microwave a cat with your Android. Is this true? And it was always these bizarre calls I'd fail. It wasn't just something little small. It was always something really odd. And I noticed one thing is that every month, all the supervisors would tell their team that we're about to go into a meeting. Hey, everybody, all the supervisors are going to our monthly team meeting, and they'd all disappear. They'd all disappear into a room for like an hour or 2 hours or something. But it always seemed like these bizarre calls started coming in at the very time that they'd all, slither off like little snakes into their little meeting room, into the Grand Canyon room or into the swamp room. They always have, in every corporate environment, they always have these cutesy poo names for the conference rooms, especially out west. It was always like the Sonoran room or the Saguaro room or the illegal alien room, the iguana room. Yes. In these modern phone systems, from a phone, you can dial into the phone equipment. You can dial into the software that operates the phone and dial in directly to a customer service representative's phone at their station where they work, their workstation. So if Zippin' and the Pippin guy, let's say my extension was extension 382, they could dial in from an outside line and call in directly to my extension and pretend that they're a customer. And a lot of calls come up on your display screen. You can usually tell who's calling because their telephone number will come up on your screen, on your computer screen or on your telephone. So you could see their cell phone number. And if their cell phone number came up, it would pre-populate on the screen, and all their information would come up, and you just have to verify them. But a lot of these people come up unverified. And it was always these really weird questions, is it true that you can microwave a cat with an Android phone? And I always suspected that the supervisors were calling in and they'd make these really difficult calls, really strange calls to trip everybody up with the people they didn't like. I don't think I was well liked at these places because I spoke up for myself a little bit too much. And I think they kind of made it difficult intentionally so they could fail you, so you wouldn't get your bonuses and you wouldn't get your raises and you couldn't post out and you couldn't get your college tuition. It was either that the supervisors were going offline into these meeting rooms and making the calls, or the people in Q&A were doing it. And this is why I think Q&A was irrelevant, because as I stated before, if the entire call center in 1 month is receiving 2.4 million calls, think about this. I mean, if you're receiving 2.4 million calls and you've got 30, let's say you have 40 quality assurance representatives. Let's divide 2.4 million by 40. They would have to listen to 60,000 calls per month, right? 60,000 calls per month per QA representative to do a true quality assurance of everyone. Okay, if it was pure. But what they told us is they just randomly, this is what they told us at Verizon, all the calls they picked were random. They just randomly will go in to extension 382 for Peter Tompkins and just happen to pull the 3 worst calls I had done all month, grade me on them, and fail me for the month, and I wasn't able to get any raises or bonuses. See, I don't think they had the manpower, and no corporation does, to really pull all the calls and listen to all the calls for each individual rep on a monthly or quarterly basis. It's impossible. There's no way to do it unless you have some way to control it. And you either control it by, sending in phony phone calls, or you're listening live on the phone to your reps taking calls, and you go, okay, I'm going to listen to this call later and listen to this call later. He made a mistake there. But in order to do that, they would literally have to be in this meeting or in some type of conference room listening to calls of everybody for hours. I mean, each manager had 30 people on their team, at least 30, if not 40 people. And so I believe that a lot of the calls that they graded us on were phony and they were fake. And they either called in themselves or they had Q&A calling in from another room. Like they had all 40 people making calls into the different teams to stump people, to ask them difficult questions or ask them questions, document the date, the time of the call, save it in a file, and then pull it at a later time to listen to it during your call review with your supervisor. Or they hired people from outside the company, like secret shoppers, to call in. I believe that, forgive me if I'm wrong, Elsa, I believe you said that would be unethical if they did it, but you've got to consider something. Call centers, as they exist, are unethical. They treat people as subhuman. They give people no time No training. They give no time. There's no break time. There's no time to eat lunch. There's no time for anything. It's totally unethical. It's a dark, dark corner of the corporate world. So, of course, they're going to be unethical because these call centers cost them so much money. They cost them billions and billions of dollars a year. That's why Verizon just shut down half of their call centers. And because it's a huge financial burden. These call centers are awful. And if they can make it automated and have robots answer the phone, that's what they're doing now. There you have it. That's my opinion on it. Don't try to microwave your cat with your iPhone. It's not possible. Ringo Starr wouldn't like that. It's peace and love, you know. So I hope you like this video. If you do, subscribe. Give me the thumbs up. Press 1 for murder. Get your copy now on Amazon. Oingo Boingo Reddit. He likes it. He gives it 5 stars. Did you lose your paw? Oh, he's there. His boing is back. My boing is back, brothers. Have a good day. Bye.